Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Single Malt Review. You can probably see what we're approaching here, but I'll let Dave bring it up.
So, Scotch Whisky, it isn't always just whiskey. Sometimes people get hold of it and put honey and exotic herbs and spices into it, make it into liqueur. Drambuie being one of the original and more or less classic Scotch whisky liqueurs.
As far as Scotch whisky liqueurs go, it's probably the classic, really. There's a few modern counterparts, but none of them have been going nearly as long as the good old Drambuie.
Still a hearty 40% though, I'm surprised by that. I've not much had Drambuie before, so this is pretty much new to me.
I'll say this right now, I'm not really a fan of Drambuie, but one of the things you can say about it is that it does at least maintain 40%. So it contains really quite a good amount of whiskey in here. A lot of liqueur, a lot of sweetened things. You'll see them around sort of 35 or even 30, just because there's a lot more sugary gunk and a lot less whiskey in there. This one, at least, they've kept the whiskey quota pretty strong, while adding the sugary stuff. And the sugary stuff in this case is apparently some heather honey is the sweetening agent for this one. You can more or less tell. The rest, of course, is all tied up in the legend of Jacobite rebellion and goodness knows what. Apparently the Bonnie Prince Charlie of some fame and renown, after his exile in France, came back to Scotland, suddenly possessing of the secret recipe, which he then imbued on his collaborators in the Highlands before they were all soundly demolished by the English sometime later. What I think probably happened, the non-canon version of the Drambuie story, and so this is entirely opinion, I think while the Bonnie Prince Charlie was hiding out in Scotland, he tried in France, while he was in exile from Scotland, he tried some Dom Benedictine, which is a very, very similar liqueur, only made from brandy and similar secret herbs and spices.
Even the same initials, DB.
And maybe he brought an improvised script for Dom Benedictine back to Scotland, because the similarities, I think, are compelling. But anyway, a far less romantic version of the story that this is a rip-off of Dom Benedictine, which it is, but never mind.
Is there any official word on which whiskey or whiskies go into?
No, and I even had a look to see if I could draw some conjecture from the company that owns this, but apparently Drambuie is actually a little bit independent. It's owned by the Drambuie Whisky Company. And as for someone may yet own them, as is often the case with Scottish distilling companies, but more independent than I was expecting, certainly. So, as for what's in it, I really don't know. I suspect probably more grain than single malt, because it says Scotch whisky and not malt whisky, which I think it would make more of a song and dance about. Was there a lot of malt in there? So I think we'll anticipate grain rather than malt, but never mind.
Oh, is it alarmingly sharp liqueur sweetness? Putting me in mind of my days as a student and the occasional, say, bottle of Opal Nera or equivalent.
It's very sweet and it's very medicinal. There's a lot of there's Irish moss.
A lot of those herbaceous qualities. That'd be where I'm getting Opal Nera from. Yeah.
There's licorice. There's Irish moss. There's aniseed in no small part whatsoever.
In fact, if I close my eyes, it's a lot like Sambuca in its many terrifying forms.
I think what we're in a roundabout way we're describing cough medicine is what this one ultimately smells like. So we'll give it a taste.
Oh, as you say, cough medicine. It's sweet and syrupy, yet
clears the nose and soothes the throat.
Punchy and herbaceous.
I mean, it's not. I mean, I joke about Drambuie, and it isn't my favourite, because it's no one's favourite who enjoys real whiskey. Like, it almost couldn't be, because it is intrinsically real whiskey that has been messed with. But as sort of liqueurs, as sweet drinks go, you could do an awful lot worse.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm partial to the Killam and Bramble liqueur. I forget the exact name it's sold under, but it's a thing that's available, and it's quite pleasant. This is a world of difference.
This is, it's wickedly sweet. I think it's almost too sweet. Well, I mean, it's way too sweet. But even for someone who was looking for a sweet thing, I think it's still too sweet. I think that's why it even mentions the rusty nail, which is possibly the world's simplest cocktail, which is Drambuie and a quantity of Scotch whisky, any quantity, depending on how dry or sweet you want it. It's kind of like a Scotch onboarding device, really, for people that want sweet drinks.
Drug.
But yeah, the Scotch gateway. But I mean, I've enjoyed a few rusty nails in my youth, but I got off them pretty smartly. But it's maybe telling that that's the cocktail that it mentions straight off the back of that. Personally, if I was tipping proper whiskey into something, it would be into a glass and then into my mouth. I wouldn't be making rusty nails. If you're down for the Drambuie, you may as well be down for the Drambuie. Mix it with an ice cube, and away you go. Let the party continue. It's probably what I do with it. But to each their own, I suppose. It should be mentioned there is a 15-year-old version of it.
Why?
That's a really good question. But the question of who the hell that is for, that continues to be one of the universe's great mysteries. But it does exist, and it does kind of take the place of a subtler, drier Drambuie. A bit like a pre-mixed rusty nail, I suppose. Who knows?
All joking aside, this is perfectly drinkable.
Yeah.
It's sweet and flavourful and spicy and herbaceous, but also a full 40%. It conceals that very well. As a mechanism for delivering ethanol to one's brain in an enjoyable way, I can see its value.
Oh, yeah.
It's not without flavour, not without merit.
Great fun at parties.
Yeah.
And as much as I might joke about it being a knockoff of Dom Benedictine, I think it's actually better than Dom, because you can... I could maybe even have 2 glasses of this without being completely sick of it. If I was drinking Dom, I'd be sick of it by, like, here. It's because it's just so cloyingly like what it is. Like that is pure cough medicine. This may bring it to mind. Dom Benedictine is, in my opinion, just medicine. That's maybe the point they would claim. But anyway, Drambuie. It's for people like us and for people like you, as someone watching a Scotch Whisky channel on YouTube, probably really not aimed at us necessarily, because if you like your whiskey straight, which most proper whiskey connoisseurs do, why would you go for something when it was artificially cut with sugar? But for people that want something, for people that like sweet drinks and want something that's maybe just a bit more interesting than your standard sweet drink, than your God forbid rum and coke I hesitate to even say it on the channel, Southern Comfort. It's a better option, If you know anyone that drinks Southern Comfort, then you have to take them to a rehabilitation centre. You have to do something. You can't just leave them like that. Good grief. Recommended, I think, if that's what you're after. I mean, don't drink it and expect to taste Scotch whisky, because you really, really won't. You will taste sugar. And it makes no bones about that. That's the difference between a liquor and a liqueur. But you could, I think, do quite a lot worse. So for me, it's a tenuous recommendation. I won't score it, because that would be opening up a new and hellish bracket of whiskey liqueur scores, which I don't want to do. So we'll just leave it as it's fine. It's better than Dom Benedictine, and if you have to drink something sweet, Drambuie is totally okay. Better than Dom, probably better than Agavero. You could do a whole lot worse. What's your thoughts on the intrinsic qualities?
Much the same. It's a perfectly adequate liqueur. It's very sweet. It's also very strong for a liqueur. And it's got a range of flavours. You can tell, I guess, that it's met whiskey at some point in its life. So, hey, yeah, again, if you want that sort of thing, then absolutely go right ahead. Yeah.
No, it's met whiskey. It shook hands. It didn't really understand the accent, but that's quite all right. Cheers, Charles. we'll be back with something a bit more relevant. This was the last episode in the batch of 5 whiskies that we've done. Can you tell? Probably.
Sandra.